Have you ever felt overlooked or even rejected? Hey, if you have, you're in good company. You know, in Jesus' time, if you were going to be considered to be a priest or a rabbi, you had to be chosen by the age of 12. So what would happen is these priests and pastors and rabbis, they would go out and they would find young men and they would say, hey, I want you to come walk closely with me. I want to disciple you. I want to teach you. I want to train you. Now, if you were not chosen to be one of the chosen few, you had to go into your father's trade. Your father had to teach you his business. You had to become a fisherman, a carpenter, a farmer, something like that. But what we got to understand is, where did Jesus pick his first 4 disciples? They were fishermen, which means the religious structure had already overlooked the first 4 disciples. You know, he went through and got a tax collector, he got a doctor. He started picking people who were already in their father's trade. He went out and picked people that all of the churches, all of the temples, synagogues, priests, rabbis had overlooked. So what you must understand, sometimes in life, man's rejection is actually God's protection. See, whenever the original 12 were overlooked, it's because God had a greater purpose for them in their next season of their life. See, a lot of us, we felt like we've been overlooked at certain points in our life. But then when the next season came, we were like, thank the Lord we were overlooked, because what we're doing now is greater. I know in my life there's numerous times that I said, man, I feel like I've been overlooked. I felt like rejected, and somebody got a position or they got thrusted up ahead of me, and I said, God, I really wanted to do that. But in the next season, when God promoted me, it was so much greater than what I was even wanting. And we must understand that man's rejection a lot of times means that God has something greater coming for us in the next season. To do what God has called us to do in life, in the business realm, in ministry, we can never look with our natural eye, but we have to listen by the Spirit of the Lord. And there's so many times that we feel like we get overlooked. There's been times in my life when I was younger, I was like, guys, please notice me. I was wanting to be noticed by certain ministers, certain business owners, certain people. But then when I identified who I was with God, every time I look back at my past and I can see where I was rejected, where I was overlooked, God put me into something greater. He stepped me up to another dimension. He put me into something. And if I would have got what I wanted, I would have missed it all. So you must understand that when the 12, the original 12, were overlooked by everybody, it's because God had a purpose for them. Just like when Samuel went into the house of Jesse to anoint the next king of Israel, where was David? He was way out in the field. He was tending to the sheep, is what we say. But actually, he was fighting a lion. He was fighting a bear. See, he was in a non-traditional school. He was in an unconventional way of training. But God was training him. God was equipping him to be the king. Now, most people in those days, they started naming all of his brothers that were actually in the literal house of Jesse, that Samuel was going to anoint one. And people were probably talking, oh, they're going to pick this one or that one. But the one that was overlooked from the beginning, the one that probably had rejection upon him, was the one that God chose. I'm here to set some people free today. I'm telling you about the Spirit of the Lord. Your rejection was protection. People overlooking you was because what they would offer you was so much smaller than God's plan. God's plan is huge, and it is so great for you. And now is a season that the favor of God is going to come upon you, and you are going to understand why everybody who left you, you're going to understand why they left you. Every time you were overlooked at your job for a promotion, you're about to see why you were overlooked, because God's got a greater plan. My friends, we got to trust God through the process of life. And remember, when you've been overlooked and when you've been rejected, God has a greater plan, and it's about to make sense. Everything in your life is about to make perfect sense, because the season that you are stepping into now is the season you've been waiting on all of your life. Now go enjoy it and do all that God's called you to.